Picture this. It's the year 1692. A bitter New England winter chills the air, and in the small Puritan village of Salem, Massachusetts, the sound of whispers fills the night. Neighbors eye each other with suspicion. Children claim to see shadows in the dark. Mothers clutch their Bibles, terrified of unseen devils. And soon the flames of hysteria will consume the town, turning ordinary people into accusers and innocent souls into the condemned. The Salem witch trials stand as one of the darkest chapters in American colonial history. Over the course of just a single year, nearly 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft. 19 were executed by hanging, and one man was crushed to death under heavy stones. All of this unfolded in a deeply religious community that believed the devil was constantly at war with them. But behind the chilling statistics lies something even more terrifying: the human cost. Families were torn apart, friends betrayed each other, and the courts, fueled by fear instead of evidence, sanctioned death in the name of God. This story is not only about witch hunts of the past, it is about how fear, when left unchecked, can twist justice, silence truth, and destroy lives. Today we journey deep into the hysteria that gripped Salem, step by step, name by name, execution by execution. Before we step into this haunting tale, I have a quick request. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to know. And if you enjoy dark history stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts as we go along. The stage for Salem's tragedy was set long before the first accusations. In the late 1600s, Massachusetts was a colony in turmoil. Disease had swept through the region, wiping out entire families. Conflicts with Indigo Enos tribes created constant fear of attack. Harsh winters led to famine and sickness, and all the while Puritan ministers preached that Satan was lurking just beyond the shadows, waiting to corrupt the faithful. This was a society bound by strict religious codes. Dancing, singing, or even dressing too extravagantly could be seen as sinful. Every misfortune, a poor harvest, a sudden illness, a child's death, was interpreted as the work of the devil. With this mindset, Salem was already a cauldron of fear, ready to boil over. It all began in the household of Reverend Samuel Parris. In the cold January of 1692, his daughter Betty and niece Abigail began to exhibit strange behaviors, violent fits, contortions, and mysterious screams. At first, the townsfolk thought the children were simply sick, but when local doctors found no natural explanation, whispers of witchcraft began to spread. Neighbors gathered around, horrified at what they saw. The girls would fall to the floor, shrieking that invisible figures were tormenting them. They claimed to see spirits of animals, dark shadows, and even neighbors from the community visiting them in ghostly forms. It didn't take long before the accusations began. The frightened girls pointed their fingers at three women who were already on the fringes of society. The first was Tituba, Reverend Parris's enslaved woman from the Caribbean. Her culture, filled with folk traditions and spiritual practices, made her an easy target. The second was Sarah Good, a homeless beggar who often muttered under her breath as she walked through town. The third was Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who had been criticized for not attending church regularly. Each of these women was vulnerable. Each was different from the rest of the community, and in Salem, being different was dangerous. When brought before the magistrates, the accusations grew more shocking. Tituba, under pressure, confessed to consorting with the devil, though her confession was likely extracted through fear and force. She claimed that witches roamed Salem, plotting to destroy the Puritans. This confession set off a wildfire of hysteria. Soon, fear turned into frenzy. Anyone could be a witch, anyone could be guilty, and anyone could be next. What began with just 3 women soon spiraled far beyond anyone's imagination. After Tituba's confession, the townspeople became convinced that Satan's agents were hiding everywhere. Betty Parris and Abigail Williams, joined now by other young girls in Salem, continued to writhe, scream, and accuse. Their word carried enormous weight. After all, who would doubt children who seemed to be tormented by invisible hands? The trials fed on fear, and fear fed on the trials. Ordinary disputes between neighbors suddenly transformed into accusations of witchcraft. If your cow died, perhaps your neighbor cursed it. If your crops failed, maybe someone had signed the devil's book. Even grudges over property or family inheritance could now be settled by branding someone a witch. In the spring of 1692, the jail cells of Salem began to fill. The accused were shackled, starved, and humiliated. Pregnant women, respected church members, even children, all found themselves dragged before the magistrates. The evidence? Strange fits, odd dreams, and the testimonies of the afflicted girls. It was here that the first true tragedy unfolded. Bridget Bishop, a woman in her 60s known for wearing bright clothing and enjoying taverns, was accused of witchcraft. She denied everything, insisting she had never harmed anyone. But the court, desperate for proof, relied on spectral evidence, claims that Bishop's spirit had appeared to the afflicted and attacked them. On June 10, 1692, Bridget Bishop was taken to Gallows Hill and hanged. She became the first official victim of the Salem witch trials. Her death sent shockwaves through the community. If a grandmother could be hanged for witchcraft, then no one was safe. After Bishop's execution, the trials escalated with terrifying speed. The Court of Oyer and Terminer, established by the colonial government, took charge of the proceedings. Judges sat in dark robes, treating every whisper and every trembling testimony as sacred truth. Spectral evidence, the idea that someone's ghost or spirit could attack another, became the centerpiece of the trials. It was impossible to disprove. If an accuser said, "Her spirit came to me in the night," how could the accused defend themselves? By July, the number of accused had grown into the dozens. Among them was Rebecca Nurse, a 71-year-old woman respected for her piety and kindness. At first, her community defended her, but when the afflicted girls dramatically screamed in the courtroom, claiming Nurse's spectre tormented them, the tide turned. Despite her age, despite her reputation, Rebecca was found guilty and sentenced to death. On July 19th, Rebecca Nurse, along with 4 other women, was led to the gallows. Her calm dignity struck all who watched. As the rope tightened around her neck, she whispered a final prayer. The crowd, silent and uneasy, began to wonder if justice had truly been served, or if innocence was being murdered in broad daylight. But Salem did not stop. As summer deepened, the trials consumed more lives. Sarah Good, the beggar woman accused at the very beginning, also met her fate at the gallows. With her last breath, she cursed the judges, declaring that God would give them blood to drink. In August, George Burroughs, a former minister of Salem, was accused. He had once been admired for his sermons, but now the afflicted claimed he was the devil's right hand. At the gallows, with the rope around his neck, Burroughs shocked everyone by perfectly reciting the Lord's Prayer, a prayer witches were believed incapable of speaking. Some in the crowd gasped, believing his innocence, but the judges ignored it. Burroughs was hanged, his body swinging in the summer sun. By September, hysteria had reached its peak. More than 100 people were imprisoned, families were bankrupted by court fees and jail costs, children were left without parents, and still the executions continued. One of the most brutal deaths was that of Giles Corey, an elderly farmer. Refusing to enter a plea, knowing that either answer would doom him, he stood silently before the court. For this, he was subjected to peine forte et dure, pressing by heavy stones. Day after day, Corey was laid on the ground as massive rocks were placed upon his chest. When urged to confess, his only words were, "More weight." After 2 days of torture, Giles Corey was crushed to death. His silence was his protest, a defiance against a court that had lost all sense of justice. As the summer of 1692 turned to autumn, Salem's hysteria reached its bloodiest stage. The month of September became a month of mass death. On September 22nd, 8 more people were hanged at Gallows Hill, among them Martha Corey, the loyal wife of Giles Corey, who had already been crushed under stones. Martha had been known as a woman of integrity, respected for her deep religious devotion, but even she could not escape the venom of accusations. When the afflicted girls writhed and screamed in court, insisting Martha's spirit attacked them, the judges once again allowed superstition to outweigh evidence. She was led to the gallows alongside Oat, her final prayers drowned by the jeers of a terrified crowd. By now, the trials had claimed 19 lives by hanging, 1 by pressing, and more than 100 rotting in prison cells. Some prisoners died before even reaching trial, starved or frozen in the harsh New England weather. Salem had transformed from a God-fearing town into a place where neighbors watched neighbors die, powerless to stop the madness. But beneath the hysteria, doubts began to grow. Prominent figures in the colony started questioning the use of spectral evidence. Could it really be that invisible spirits were enough to condemn a man or woman to death? Ministers like Increase Mather argued that it was better that 10 suspected witches should escape than 1 innocent person be condemned. The turning point came when accusations reached the highest ranks of society. Even the wife of Governor William Phipps was whispered about as a possible witch. Suddenly, those in power realized the trials were spiraling out of control. If the governor's own family could be accused, then truly no one was safe. By October 1692, the Court of Oyer and Terminer was dissolved. New trials were held, this time rejecting spectral evidence. Without the girls' dramatic performances and ghostly accusations, cases began to collapse. Prisoners were slowly released, though many had already lost their homes, their livelihoods, or their families. In total, over 200 people were accused, 30 were found guilty, and 20 were executed. Countless others suffered imprisonment, shame, and lifelong trauma. Salem was left scarred, not just by death, but by the guilt of knowing innocent lives had been destroyed in the name of fear. The families of the victims petitioned for justice. Over time, the colony admitted its mistakes. In 1711, the Massachusetts government offered compensation to the heirs of the executed, but no amount of monsos. They could erase the memory of the gallows or the sound of stones crushing Giles Corey's chest. The Salem witch trials became a symbol, a warning etched into history of what happens when hysteria overrides reason, when religion is twisted into a weapon, and when justice bows to fear. The story of Salem is not just about witches, it is about people, ordinary men and women whose lives were taken by suspicion, fear, and superstition. It reminds us that in times of crisis, societies can turn against their own. Innocence can be ignored, truth can be silenced, and justice can be replaced by vengeance. Even today, echoes of Salem remain. Whenever rumors spread faster than facts, whenever prejudice targets the vulnerable, whenever fear is used to control, the spirit of those trials returns. The gallows may be gone, but the lesson must never be forgotten. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe something like Salem could happen again in today's world? Share your views in the comments below. And if you want more dark history stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and ring the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Your support keeps these stories alive and ensures that the lessons of history are never buried. When the executions finally stopped and the jail doors creaked open, the nightmare did not simply vanish. Those who survived carried scars that never healed. Imagine being a woman accused, thrown into a freezing cell, shackled in iron chains, waiting for a trial you know is stacked against you. Even if you were released, your reputation was forever stained. Neighbors whispered, employers refused to trust you. Children of the accused grew up under the shadow of shame. In Puritan society, where honor was everything, an accusation was almost as deadly as a rope. Some survivors lost their homes, seized to pay for court fees or jail expenses. Families of the executed often faced poverty. Widows and artisans, orphans struggled to survive in a community that had branded their loved ones as servants of the devil. The trials ended, but the fear lingered, and deep down, the town of Salem knew that the greatest sin was not witchcraft, it was what ordinary people had done to each other. Historians have long debated why Salem descended into chaos. Several factors combined into a perfect storm of hysteria. Religious extremism. Puritans believed the devil was real and actively working in their world. Any misfortune, disease, famine, accidents was often blamed on Satan. This made accusations of witchcraft believable. Social tensions. Salem village was divided between wealthy landowners and struggling farmers. Old grudges over property lines and inheritance fueled many accusations. Calling your rival a witch became a deadly weapon. Gender and power. The majority of those accused were women, especially those who were outspoken, independent, or socially vulnerable. In a patriarchal society, such women were easy targets. Fear of the unknown. Native American raids, disease outbreaks, and harsh winters created constant anxiety. Instead of addressing these problems rationally, people turned their fear into scapegoats. Psychological contagion. Once the first children displayed fits, others followed. Was it stress, illness, or deliberate performance? Historians still debate, but the effect was contagious hysteria spreading like wildfire. Salem's tragedy was not the work of demons, it was the work of human fear, prejudice, and the dangerous power of belief without evidence. At first glance, the Salem witch trials feel like a relic of the distant past, but when we look closer, unsettling similarities appear in our own times. Think about mass hysteria, how rumors spread on social media within minutes, destroying reputations before facts emerge. Think about mob justice, where a crowd's anger replaces due process. Or consider moments in history when governments, driven by fear, target entire groups, whether for their religion, ethnicity, or political beliefs. Salem's gallows may be gone, but the human instinct for fear and scapegoating still exists. The story warns us, when logic is abandoned and fear takes control, even the most civilized society can commit horrors. Salem is not just a village in 1692, it is a mirror reflecting our own world. The Salem witch trials ended more than 330 years ago, yet their echoes remain. Innocent lives were destroyed not because of evidence, but because of fear. Ordinary people became executioners. Faith was twisted into a weapon, and justice, once lost, claimed the lives of the very people it was meant to protect. When we remember Salem, we must remember the faces, not just the statistics. Rebecca Nurse praying quietly as the rope tightened, Giles Corey gasping under the crushing stones, whispering more weight, Sarah Good cursing the judges with her final breath. They were human beings, mothers, fathers, neighbors, whose only crime was living in a world consumed by hysteria. So the lesson is clear, fear unchecked can become deadly. Salem teaches us to guard against prejudice, to question authority when it abandons reason, and to never let hysteria silence truth. If this story touched you, let's keep history alive together. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring the bell icon so you never miss another dark history story. And most importantly, tell me in the comments what you felt during this journey. Do you think our modern world has truly moved beyond Salem, or could something like this happen again?